Buffalo Bill.
Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, which is, I told you about how I saw the elf on the shelf.
Yeah.
The elf on the shelf, and there was an elf, and then there was a female elf in a hole, and then they had a bucket going down with some lotion in the bucket.
Okay.
And there was a little dog by Buffalo Bill.
Precious was his dog.
Don't you hurt her.
Yeah.
Was she a big fat lady? Was she a big fat person?
So Thomas Harris's 1988 novel Silence of the Lambs was a huge hit, and the 1991 adaptation starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins was, as we all know, incredibly successful.
Mm-hmm.
And actually one of only 3 films to ever win the Big 5 Oscars. And it starred, we have Ted Levine.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Levine? Let's go with Levine.
Okay.
Played the serial killer Buffalo Bill, the killer that
Don't you hurt her.
Yeah, soon to be Agent Clarice Starling and Unit Chief Jack Crawford in the FBI were hunting. So I wanted to kind of talk with you, Captain, about who Buffalo Bill is.
Well, that's the problem, right? Because this character, it's kind of like Hannibal Lecter, right? When you first hear about Hannibal Lecter, you go, I heard anyways, oh, he's based on Jeffrey Dahmer.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you study Dahmer and then you study these movies, right? You go, is Lecter anything like Dahmer?
Right.
Like there's 1 or 2 points, but so to me, then it becomes blurry. Was he based on Dahmer, or was he just was one thing about him based on Dahmer? And then so again with the Buffalo Bill character, because what Hannibal Lecter is trying to do is profile this individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing that, you kind of find these little bits and pieces of Buffalo Bill and who is he based off of.
Right. And it's weird because, horror films, mystery films, thrillers, all of those, they do have, some of them have ties to real life serial killers and real life crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because often when a particular serial killer is discussed or a particular fictional character is discussed, they'll say, oh, well, this serial killer inspired the creation of this character, or this character is based off of this serial killer. But, so through the years, what I thought was intriguing that I've heard so many times what real life serial killer Buffalo Bill was based off of,
mm-hmm.
only to figure out that he's likely pieces of, elements taken from several different real life killers.
Right. And look, some of them might not be taken from one certain killer. It could be the imagination of somebody as well. Like, well, if I was a killer, then what would I do? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As far as the writer goes. So it's not like all writers, when they're writing about a killer, has to take everything about this person from something in real life.
Right. But we do know that Thomas Harris spent a good amount of time with members of the FBI's behavioral science unit, learning about real life killers and learning about the FBI agents that have hunted them over the years.
Well, let's just tell them that we're making a movie and see if we could hang out with them as well.
So we can get some insider information.
Oh, that would be awesome, right? We got this character. We call him Buffalo Captain.
This is a long-term project. You won't see it in theaters for 18 or 19 years.
We got Hannibal Colonel and Buffalo Captain.
By the way, there's no money in it for you. So who is Buffalo Bill? Well, many will remember the famous scene of where Dr. Lecter first wants to know why they call him Buffalo Bill, adding that the papers won't say, to which Clarice Starling tells Lecter it started as a bad joke in Kansas City Homicide where someone said, this one likes to skin his humps.
Mm-hmm.
So Buffalo Bill, his real name is James Gum. So just like James, but without the S, James Gum. He was basically, I think, based off of elements of several real life serial killers. And we'll kind of go through that as we explore his character a little bit. But Gum had 2 aliases. John Grant and Jack Gordon. And I believe he was using the name Jack Gordon when he was confronted by Agent Starling. James Gumb was born in California. His mother was trying to break into Hollywood. She was entering beauty pageants and aspiring to be a Hollywood actress.
So she's attention seeking.
Well, she did not know who James Gumb's father was, or at least he had nothing to do with James or his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Her pregnancy, among other things, likely ended her run at the pageants and her shot at being an actress. She was in the Sacramento beauty pageant.
Mm-hmm.
And she was actually pregnant with him at the time, like just a month or two pregnant. Now, she turned to drinking and became an alcoholic after Gumb was born. Maybe had been on her way there during the pregnancy as well. And little James Gumb went into the foster care system when he was just 2 years of age. When he is 10, he is adopted by his grandparents. James Gumb kills his grandparents. So here is our first likeness to a real-life serial killer. Just like Ed Kemper, James Gumb's grandparents were his first victims.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Kemper, he goes off into a psychiatric hospital and is later released when he's an adult.
Well, and also, he claims that he wanted to see what it felt like to kill somebody, which is exactly what Ed Kemper said.
Mm-hmm. Later, Gumb has a relationship with one of Hannibal Lecter's patients,
Mm-hmm.
Benjamin Raspail. And Raspail travels, and he's in search of like a boy toy. Raspail's pretty well-to-do. I think he's a musician. Well, after Benjamin leaves James Gumb, Gumb kills Benjamin's new lover. Lecter has some knowledge of this, but it seems that this murder went unsolved, as we know from seeing the movie that James Gumb is not in prison during any portion of that story.
Mm-hmm.
So Gumb is applying for gender reassignment surgery, but he can't pass the psychological portions of the qualifying test. Gumb is living in a deceased woman's home. This is Mrs. Lippman. Mrs. Lippman was pretty well off, and Gumb kills her in Florida and takes all of her money, lives in her home, basically like assumes the role of someone who would have inherited all of her belongings.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where he finds himself living in this home, and now he has money to travel around and kill. So Gumb wants to be a woman. He decides that he's going to make a skin suit, a women's skin suit. This element was from Ed Gein, who did various creative things with skin from his victims and skin from corpses.
Okay.
Including the always chic skin mask.
Yeah, the skin suit and the skin mask.
Yeah, so Gein was
the worst one for me was the belt that's made out of nipples.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was... There were some lists, when we covered Ed Gein, there were some lists in those episodes that were difficult to, one, to compile, and two, to read, to say the least. But Gein was known as the Butcher of Plainfield. He killed 2 women, and that we know of. There's some debate if he killed more.
Right.
And he was also a body snatcher. James Gumb was not a body snatcher. So James Gumb, he needed to capture, kill, and harvest women's skins. We see the famous scene where James Gumb is dressing up like a woman with women's clothing and makeup, taking pictures of himself. So now we sprinkle in a little bit of Jerry Brudos into the equation. Jerry,
isn't this the shoe killer?
Yeah, so you're right. Brudos was featured in the series 1 of Mindhunter.
Yeah, he was scary to me because he was the character. Anyways, looked as big as Ed Kemper's character, but he just looked a little more not right in the head.
Yeah, and he was less like where Ed Kemper seemed to want to befriend the FBI agents. Brudos was there for his own reasons.
Right.
So Brudos murdered at least 4 women in the state of Oregon. He enjoyed photography and dressing up in the clothing of his victims. And he loved, as we know from Mindhunter, he loved women's shoes.
Well, and this is the famous scene when Buffalo Bill takes his twig and berries and puts it between his legs, and he looks in the mirror and says, "Oh, would you fuck me? Unfuck me." And which I think I used to think American Girl by Tom Petty was playing at that time, but it wasn't. It was that American Girl's in the movie.
American Girl is playing when Catherine Martin is driving her car.
Yes.
And it would end up being abducted by James Gumb.
But it's a different song when he's doing.
Right. It's
Would you fuck me?
Something horses. I should have wrote that down. I thought for some reason that would come up.
Yeah, you should have, because I can never remember. But it would make more sense if it was, "She was an American girl," with his twig and berries between his legs.
Unless Thomas Petty was like, "I don't want my song playing during that portion."
Yeah.
But so James Gumb's, his modus operandi was he would approach a woman pretending to be injured and ask for help, then surprise attack her, knocking her out, and then kidnapping her. This, as we all know, was a Ted Bundy tactic.
Yes.
But another one of Bundy's tactics, often he would dump the bodies far away, this in proximity to the abduction site. James Gumb dumped most of his bodies far away to elude detection, pointing the investigators in different towns to different states, far from where Gumb was living in beautiful Belvedere, Ohio.
Yeah. So there you go, Ohio.
But James would need to keep his victims alive for a while after kidnapping them. He needed to loosen their skin while they were still alive. So Gumb would keep them. And look, one thing that didn't make it to the movie was, in the story, the local tabloids, once they thought an abducted woman was taken by Buffalo Bill, this is pretty dark. They would do a countdown of number of days. Like there was a common number of days between an abduction and when they would find a floater, when they would find a body floating in the river. And so the tabloid would run these countdowns. And actually, in the situation of Catherine Martin, the FBI encouraged the tabloids to stop doing the countdown because they thought it was increasing his speed between abduction, kill, and dump. And they knew they only had so much time to save this woman. And if they poked the bear, so to speak, they might speed up his process and thus not be able to save this poor woman that he abducted. So he killed several women by the time that he abducted Catherine Martin. The one that we just discussed was singing American Girl in her car before he tricks her with the helping him move a couch in the back of that truck or van.
Yeah, the song he's dancing to is "Goodbye Horses."
Yes.
By Q.
We don't know.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know.
Lazarus. Yeah.
There you go.
Something like that.
So 5 women, he had killed 5 women by this point in the movie, and Catherine was to be his 6th victim. So this little portion of the story and of his character actually comes from Gary Heidnik. Gary Heidnik kidnapped 6 women and kept them in a pit or a well in his Philadelphia home, raping and torturing them. He actually killed 2 of these women.
Well, and it looks like Buffalo Bill's house, almost like it has 2 basements.
Yeah, so it's described as a sprawling basement with many rooms and several levels, which really makes for like a dungeon type setting.
Right.
You know,
so was that the same with Gary Heidnik, where it was like multiple levels in the basement, or it was just in his house?
I think he had multiple rooms, but I don't think there were multiple levels in his house. Gary Heidnik was a weird guy because he was actually he made quite a bit of money investing. Like when they caught up to him, when they were looking at him and thinking about going and making the arrest. I'm a little unclear on the story, but
I just looked up a picture of him.
Yeah, so he had like $500,000 in investments, and I think the local police were like, "Yeah, this can't be our guy. He's
East Lake, Ohio." It was where he was born.
Yeah, he was born in East Lake, Ohio.
Yeah. I used to play, I think it was East Lake soccer tournament. So, wow.
Well, talking about James Gumm's basement. So the scene at the end where can we just be, I should throw this out there because somewhere there's somebody going, spoiler alert, but the movie's like 27 years old. If
you haven't watched it by now,
you're sorry, dude.
Something's wrong with
right.
you.
You've been incredibly busy for the last 27 years.
I haven't got around to it.
I just can't find the time. There's no time.
I've been too busy putting multiple levels in my basement.
If you haven't had time in 27 years, you won't have time for the next 27. We're doing you a favor right here.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene at the end where Gum is hunting, let's call it that, hunting Jodie Foster's.
Mm-hmm.
He's got on, it's pitch black in the basement, and he's wearing the night vision goggles. That actually, I always thought that scene was kind of out of necessity, that like, he's like, oh crap, this FBI agent's going to bust me. I need to get the upper hand on her, so I'm going to flip off the lights and put on these goggles, and I'm going to shoot her.
Yeah.
It turns out that's actually it wasn't out of necessity. It wasn't like he was like, oh, I'll just do this and try to get the upper hand on her. He actually preferred, so he would kill the women in his basement because of, to muffle the noise. People outside wouldn't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, he actually did that same method to several of his other victims. He enjoyed hunting them in his basement, and he would turn off the lights, put on those night vision goggles, and walk around them in the dark, almost silently with a gun, waiting to...
Who would do this?
James Gum would do this.
Right.
And so...
this is not based off of Gary.
No, this is not based off of Gary Heidnik. I actually think that Heidnik, he was much more into the rape portion of his crimes rather than the killing. That might point to the reason why he only killed 2 people but kidnapped 6.
Mm-hmm.
So James Gum, his whole thing is, keep in mind, he needs this skin suit. So he needs different parts and pieces. There's no nice way of putting this.
Right.
Different parts and pieces of these women to make his suit. Well, hunting them in the dark almost allowed him to handpick them, because if he was going to kill them and they knew about it in advance, they would fight him back. And during the struggle, it could ruin some of the pieces and parts that he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the way that he would prefer to attack and kill them when their time came, let's say. Now, as far as Starling goes, she was too small for James Gum, but he intended to kill her, not just to save his own neck, but he really admired her beautiful hair. He was intending on keeping her hair. James Gum was like 6'1", maybe 210, 220. So not a large man, but above average, and he's trying to make a skin suit, a women's skin suit. Most women are smaller than men, so he needed either, he needed to use certain methods to make sure that he could make himself look like a woman once he's wearing this suit that he's trying to make.
Yeah.
So,
and just think about how the smell of the suit.
Oh God.
You're going to have to really cake on the perfume if you want to smell like a woman.
Get out the talc powder.
Yeah.
Who is it? Shaq that sells the Gold Bond?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of Gold Bond. Like Shaq size Gold Bond. They should make a special jug that you get that's Shaq size. So after killing his victims and removing the skins and the body parts that he wanted, James Gum would insert a death's head moth into the corpses and dump their bodies in rivers.
Mm-hmm.
This is very much like Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, who dumped women's bodies in rivers, destroying, all kinds of evidence. And he also placed foreign objects into the corpses as well.
But not a moth, right?
Mostly rocks.
Right, because that isn't that moth on the cover of Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah, I believe there were several movie theater type posters for the movie itself, but I think that's probably the most famous one.
Yeah,
would be the picture of a woman's face.
Well, it's Jodie Foster's.
Jodie Foster's face covering up her mouth with the death's head moth.
Well, what's interesting is this photo. You can clearly tell that's Jodie, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember it being that obvious that it was Jodie Foster before.
I actually I wasn't thinking that until you just pointed it out.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes the most sense, obviously, but
It's really just the eyes. It's
Yeah.
like, those are Jodie Foster's eyes. I don't know if that's Jodie Foster's face, I guess. So yeah, that's her nose. Yeah, that's her.
so we have, I mean, in this, look, this is a bit of a selfish episode for me because this is one of my favorite movies. It's for me, it's one of the movies that got me into the FBI side and the psychological side of hunting these serial killers.
Right.
But I absolutely love this movie. But what's so interesting is you see somebody like Thomas Harris who, look, he took the time and really probably did a good deal of research into the darkest minds out there to piece together a character. And what the reason why I think the movie holds up so well is because the movie, to me, imitates real life, imitates true crime so much that it's as fantastical of a story as it is, it's believable along the way. And it really, to me, is, I think you could throw this one in the horror genre. I mean,
yeah, or thriller.
Yeah, because to me, even though it is a psychological thriller, it's up there and it might be more terrifying than a lot of the slasher films out there.
But it's not gory.
Right. I mean, what's weird here is the words are a little more gory than the actual images. Because they have to tell this story of this horrible human being who's hunting women to make a skin suit. And now you are using Dr. Lecter, who was a cannibal, to help you find this guy.
Well, but I also think, like you were talking before, because it's kind of horror, it's kind of thriller, it's kind of just a cop movie. There's so many kind of different genres that it's in that I think, one, that's why it was so successful, but I just feel like all the other ones fell short of the original.
Yeah, and well, the thing is, you have to wonder too, did it set the bar too high for the franchise?
Well, I think the difficult thing is, like you said, it's so good because it's so close to just true crime. It almost kind of could have been like a documentary of some kind, and the other ones get a little more out there. Where there's the scene, I think in 2, where the guy is still alive at the dinner table, but his head is cut open or something.
And Hannibal,
yeah, and just stuff like that, where it's like it just gets a little cheesy.
Well, and so in the franchise, Hannibal's the third, well, actually the fourth of the story featuring Hannibal Lecter. But for me, Captain, the thing that really threw that one off, look, I like Julianne Moore, who played Clarice Starling in Hannibal.
Right.
But it's one of those things. It's like you really, when you fall in love with a movie or it's just something that you really enjoyed, you just want to see the same actors and actresses again playing those roles. It kind of feels.
Well, to me, it's better if you go, okay, well, Jodie Foster doesn't want to come back. Okay, now let's introduce this new person.
Right.
Who is she? Well, for all we know, Jodie Foster's character was killed or whatever, right?
Or moved on to something else.
Right. And so here's a whole different person. But once you start going, well, this is Clarice. I thought Jodie Foster was Clarice. So I don't know. I think they made some missteps, but they probably made so much money, and I'm sure that the first Silence of the Lambs didn't cost much money.
Well, and like I said, it's the only one of 3 movies to win the 5 major categories of Oscars. So, I mean, hugely successful. So I thought Red Dragon was very good.
Mhm.
Now, originally that's Manhunter. There was a movie made about Red Dragon, the book Red Dragon before, called Manhunter, which the Edward Norton version of Red Dragon is it's damn
Red
near.
Dragon is the third one.
So
I think it goes Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, Red Dragon, and then Hannibal Rising is the order of the franchise.
well, but that's the order that they come out, but not the order of the story.
Okay.
So Hannibal Rising is technically the first.
Right.
If you want to go back to if you want to go back to his early life,
the budget was $19 million to make Silence of the Lambs. And then for Hannibal, their budget was $87 million.
yeah.
So look, that's the thing. Is some of these genre type movies, especially this one, you want to make a good true crime type movie, lower the budget. Because if you do, you're going to have it be more gritty. You're going to have it be a little more real.
Well, and Red Dragon was actually released twice. So you have Manhunter that came out before Silence of the Lambs. It's technically the second portion of the story, but it came out again as Red Dragon after Hannibal came out.
Silence of the Lambs grossed $272.7 million worldwide and became the fifth highest grossing film of 1991.
And I was too young to remember if this was a genius of marketing or if it's just a word of mouth. Hey, I saw this movie and it was crazy. You have to see it.
Well, I think the poster, really. I mean, the visual, that graphic arts that they did for the poster, it's like right away you go, what is that? I want to see that.
And it does help that the book was very successful as well.
Right.
So regarding Thomas Harris, I think he's scheduled to have another book come out in May of next year. But it sounds to me like it won't be a Hannibal Lecter book. So this is his first book in like 40 years that does not have Hannibal Lecter in the story.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder what direction he's going to take.
Well, he's 78, so I think he's taking the I'm retired direction.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is this going to be true crime at all or crime based at all?
So he only has one other book out that doesn't feature Hannibal Lecter. All of his books, all of his stories have Hannibal Lecter in the story. The first book that he did not, and it was about, I think it was about terrorism. I think it was called like Black Sunday or something like that. So it's a terrorism type book. And then he got into this serial killer FBI stuff with the Hannibal Lecter, James Gumb, Clarice Starling, Will Graham, all those characters that were made famous by the franchise. So how
many books did he write?
So Black, if I have the name correct, Black Sunday, Red Dragon, this is the order. Black Sunday, Red Dragon, The Silence of the Lambs was his third book. Hannibal Rising was his fifth book. And now I don't think they've released the title of this book that's coming out in May, but from the interviews I've seen, it's not going to have Hannibal Lecter in the book. So
it could be a part of the series, but Hannibal Lecter's not in it, or it could just be something totally different.
Correct. And actually, so he's only done 2 books in like the last 10 years. Hannibal Rising and this book that will be coming out next year. You know, he signed an 8-figure deal for 2 books.
Wow.
So that means what, 10 million or more?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, is that like, there's no way they're going to make their money back on these 2 books, do you think?
Unless
Did anybody buy Hannibal Rising?
Unless part of the deal is that they're already optioned for film
that
once
makes
you pay
sense.
that amount. Because think about it this way: you made a movie for 19 million, and you made almost 300 million. So you pay the guy the money.
Yeah, and you also have to wonder, is that part of well, we kind of feel like we owe him some of this from the last one. Let's just kind of lock him down for the rest of his career.
Yeah, because I can't see where, like, what the other ones made, but I'm sure I'm sure that they kept making good money because they kept making them.
So I would guess Hannibal probably made a lot of money because, and I understand it had a much higher budget, but I do remember like the theaters being packed for Hannibal. It was highly anticipated.
I went to see that in the theaters.
Yeah. And then Red Dragon, I don't know. I actually, at the time, so from about the time that I was about 17, 18 till I was about 26, I was pretty much broke.
Right.
You know, you're trying to live your life, you're working hard, and you have a little
From
bit
what age to what age?
There was a good, let's say 17 to 25 or 26. I felt like I was broke. I had just enough money for chicken wings and beer.
Well, how old am I now? 37. So 17 to 37. Yeah.
So I did not see Red Dragon in the theater, although I wanted to. But the other thing though was I had already seen Manhunter. How many times am I going to screw that up? I'd already seen Manhunter, and it was, I mean, it's damn near the same film. It's just you got better actors and a higher budget for the Red Dragon version. But
well, and if you think that, you know, because we're so trigger based right now, like you say this thing and it triggers somebody and then they're all upset. And this, you know, this is 1991, 1992. There was a lot of feminist groups, women right activists that came out. There was the LGBT community that came out because they felt that Buffalo Bill was portrayed as a bisexual and transsexual, even though they replied with the character, it wasn't a gay character. So he was a tormented man who hated himself and wished he was a woman. So I guess that would transgender, I guess, on some level there.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit because they did come under fire for this. And I think, look, especially 1991, you have to be of the mindset of the time. And where you have, you know, this community, these different communities are kind of making their way onto TV more regularly during the early 90s, late 80s. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that were like, hey, we want to make this clear. This is not who we are. Right, if you want, if you want to label our group something, whatever you want to call our group, we are not this person that you saw on the screen. And of course, we all know that now. Nowadays, you don't even have to say that. But the interesting thing here, though, is, and it's kind of clear in the movie, but you have Thomas Harris that points it out better in the book, where Lecter is saying, look, even though James Gumb has had homosexual relationships, even though he thinks that he wants to be a woman, even though he has signed up for gender reassignment surgery.
In the book, that's not shown in the movie.
Right. In the end, that's not who this guy truly is. He's just so confused and messed up. He's trying to figure out who he's supposed to be, where he fits in, and he doesn't fit in anywhere. So therefore, he thinks that he should be something different than what he is.
Right.
And so they do.
Well, no, but my point was that, you know, everybody's so triggered these days, but this has been going on for a long time as far as just people being outraged really over nothing. Right? Like, look, if anybody with half of a brain goes, okay, well, whether this guy is transgender or whether this guy is homosexual, obviously not every homosexual acts like Buffalo Bill.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that people feel like they have to come out and argue these points as if the major population is not going to get that, you know.
Well, and I don't know if it was Harris that said this or who said it, but in defense of, you know, somebody basically said, look, for the women's groups, we would like to point out here that James Gumb considered himself to be worthless, and he was a man, and he likely wanted to be a woman because he thought them to be something superior to him.
Yeah, possibly. But also the first argument you go with against the feminists is, hey, the main character is female, Jodie Foster, and she is working for the FBI. She has skills. She's put on this case for a reason. That would be my first argument.
Well, she's a bit of a prodigy.
Right, but then they give her crap saying that, she's playing a lesbian character.
Oh.
It's just like, it's this, but that's what my point of bringing this up is a lot of this trigger stuff, a lot of this social justice warrior crap it's really just nonsense. It's just, I'm going to say this and I'm going to get a reaction and you're going to defend this logically, but I won't be listening to you when you defend it.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've not read the book Hannibal, and her character is not in Red Dragon, so I don't know that her character was intended to be lesbian. And I know in the movie they didn't
address it, which
right.
I think
that makes sense. That's where people's minds wander. But real quick onto something else. Regarding the book, one significant difference between the book and between the movie Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter, his character in the book, has 6 fingers on his left hand, and his eyes
like an extra pinky, or
I don't know which extra finger he has, but he definitely has one that shouldn't be there. And then his eyes are described as maroon in color. He doesn't have blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes, gray eyes. He has maroon.
Now you have written some stuff yourself. I mean, you haven't had it published.
I'm no Thomas Harris, but go ahead.
Well, but I mean, he's working on his 6th book.
Yep.
In 40 years.
That's the kind of career I want.
You can catch up.
Can I have? Yeah, but can I get an 8-figure deal?
No, what I want to pull like a Beatles though. You come out guns a-blazing. You're a band in the major spotlight from 1964 to 1970. You have about 18 records that come out. Tons of singles. So what you do is you write all the books.
Okay.
And then you start
just
putting
like
them out.
stockpile them and then rapid fire release.
Yeah, kind of like the Harry Potter stuff. I mean, that was like, I know she didn't have those written beforehand, but it was kind of like once it caught fire, she was like, go, 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 go. And don't you think that they paid her more than $10 million for?
Oh, I would have to. I mean, if
plus the movie stuff. I mean, she's a billionaire.
If they paid her any less than that, that's highway robbery. I mean, that stuff was sold like crazy. I'll put together a 9-part series, and I'll write everything in advance, and we'll just
9-part series.
9-part series.
Did you just come up with that off the top of your head, or are you working on something?
I think Star Wars made me go to the 9-part series, and then here's what I'll do. What do you think? 1 book a year for 9 years, or do we do them faster than that?
Every 6 months.
Every 6 months,
if they're done. And the thing too is, if the second book's not that good, they'll be like, he only had 6 months to write it.
JB Smoove. Smooth, is it JB Smooth or JB Smoove?
Smooth.
Okay. So JB Smoove tried to tell Larry David that they need to do 10 seasons of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And Larry David was trying to tell Smooth, he said, look, I only think I got 8 or 9 seasons in me. Why are you so hung up on this idea of 10 seasons of Curb Your Enthusiasm? And JB Smoove said, because it's going to look nice on a shelf. When you have 10, it's just a nice even number. It feels complete.
Right.
It's going to look much better on my shelf.
Sounds better than 8.
Yeah. If you would have told me we were just doing 8 or 9 of these things, I would have never signed up.
Right. We better go to 10. No. So, you going to work on something? You going to write something?
I'll go home and get started.
Well, but if you're going to write something, what would it be? I mean, are you going to write based on true crime? Would you write a true crime novel? Because you're more into true crime novels than most people I know.
Yeah. So I don't know. Probably true crime or
based on true crime.
Yeah, or create a fictional story that has a lot of truth to it. Where some of the some of the characters are based off of elements of people you and I have studied throughout the course of True Crime Garage.